Hey everybody, welcome to another Rackspace Office Hours Hangout. My name is Alan Bush and we're broadcasting live from the Castle, Rackspace's headquarters here in San Antonio, Texas. We are joined today by a special guest from the Rackspace Private Cloud group. We'll introduce him here in just a second, but first I want to introduce Drew Cox, our usual co-host. How you doing today, Drew?
Doing great, caffeinated and ready to go.
All right, yeah, absolutely. That's how we like to see it. We've also wanted to introduce here our special guest today, Kevin Carter. Kevin, how's it going?
Pretty well. How are you doing today?
Oh, not too shabby, not too shabby. Really happy to have you on. Glad that you could
Thanks for
join
having
us.
me.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. So, I guess we can explain, why we have you here. We just wanted to talk with you because you are a developer. You've been a racker for a couple of years now and built some pretty cool tools that I know a lot of customers that Drew and I have worked with before have used, and then some other, you're developing private cloud in a way that I think a lot of people are using your work, but not necessarily knowing that it's you directly. So, just kind of wanted to shine a little spotlight here on a great racker and invite you along for that. So, definitely glad to have you here. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been at Rackspace?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so like I said, my name is Kevin Carter. Been at Rackspace for a little over 3 years now. And I'm a current developer with the Rackspace Private Cloud group, where we're focused on developing the internal Rackspace product, but also contributing upstream to OpenStack as a whole. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm originally from San Francisco, moved from San Francisco to San Antonio to come here to work at Castle. So it's been a good 3 years so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're definitely glad to have you. Definitely glad to have you. Yeah, so like I said, we just want to chat and just talk and shine a spotlight on some of our good rackers, and that's what we're going to be doing. If you're watching out there and you want to participate in the conversation, we definitely recommend that you do that. We've got several different ways to join in on the conversation. So one way is through the Q&A app that's built in directly into the Google Plus application here. So it looks like Matthew's already joined in on the conversation. He wants to know, how was lunch? I had something from Letitia's, one of our vendors that came in, and it's delicious. So I highly recommend it. Drew, Kevin, how was your guys' lunch?
Uh-oh, Kevin's muted.
Oh, Kevin's still muted. Drew,
I think that
you
means
spoke
I
earlier
win and I
on.
get to go
Yeah.
first. I scavenged lunch. We have a catering company that comes in and takes care of our customers when they're here, and anything that doesn't get eaten by our customers gets shared with the rest of the group. So I had a nice pastry and another cup
It
of
was very
coffee. So
continental.
I had a
Very
continental
continental.
lunch, indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed.
absolutely. Kevin, yourself, how was lunch?
I had so far I've had a coffee shop lunch. I haven't had a traditional lunch. I had some
Ah,
hummus, crackers, and a triple small Americano.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
Yeah, that's yeah. Matt, looks like you're just a little bit early on the trigger on that one. I'm the only one that's had the lunch yet. So we'll get back to you and let you know a little later. Thanks, Matt, for your question. Anybody else that wants to ask a question though can do that just the same way. It can be lunch related. It can be private cloud related. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the tools that you built, Kevin. It can be related to those tools as well. So yeah. So anyway, just jump in that way. The other way that you can ask a question is to use our hashtag on Twitter, and we're using the hashtag CloudQA. When you do that, we can actually incorporate the comment directly into the Hangout. So last week we had a great question from a viewer named Skip who wanted to know about using SSL with an Nginx web server. So if you want to ask a question, use hashtag CloudQA, and we'll pull that right in to the Hangout and get you incorporated with the discussion there. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and bring in anything we want to talk about. So, Drew, do you have anything that you wanted to kick us off with today?
I was slow on the mute trigger there too. So I've actually known Kevin for about 3 years, I guess. We were in the cloud to start our journeys here at Rackspace, and so knowing some of the tools that you've built and some of the functionalities that you saw customers need, you really took an initiative and built tooling to make a few things just easier on Rackspace customers. And to kind of start out with more of a comment than a question, and then we'll shift into more of that. I liked the way you approach cloud support, because it's finding ways to solve customer problems, and I think that's the ethos that Rackspace approaches our support approach with, I guess, is to look at where we can help customers, look at places that we can take some of the heavy lifting off of the plate of the customer, and handle some of those things. And so you see that throughout the way we approach our customers' needs. You see that when someone calls in, when someone submits a ticket, but then even in more of an after hours, on your own time type of set of projects, you see Rackers working to build tooling out to make customers' lives easier. So with that context, I'd like to kind of pass it over to Kevin. Can you tell us the story behind, like, when you got the idea for Turbolift, and then some of the other tools that you've kind of worked through? How did they come to fruition?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Just as a side there, yeah, definitely think that's taking the load off the customers. And I think that definitely corresponds to a lot of the way that I approach problems with the tooling that I make. And as I develop it, it's a lot of the time I look at it's fun for me. Like I do it in my own time. It's not a lot of the tools that I created on my own GitHub account aren't necessarily tools that Rackspace has said, oh, we need this developed, we need this created. It's just something that I went out and like, oh, this is a need, and I went and did it. And it's like a puzzle. It's fun. But in the case of Turbolift, that was at the time, and in the public cloud, we had Cloud Files, we had Swift Client, and there are a lot of people who were looking at Cloud Files and trying to figure out how they could do rsync-like functions to Cloud Files, where you can move lots of data and store directories and keep structure. And so Turbolift was really an answer to that need originally. I mean, really, actually, Turbolift is named actually because I name everything after Star Trek, and Turbolift is the elevator that takes things through the spaceship. But it was a need that I was trying to solve. I was trying to move data to the cloud. Since then, it's evolved to being able to download, upload, transfer between multiple regions in Rackspace Public Cloud, Swift accounts, manage CDN, delete data. It's grown since then, but the name is stuck. So, but the Turbolift was a good project, and it's still going. I'm still developing on it as I find time, but right now the latest version 2.3 I think is pretty stable, and it's been. I've got a couple external contributors who have come through and made features for it, and it's had a good reception so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things,
go on, Drew.
I'll go ahead and go. One of the things that I really like about the way we see Rackers jump into these types of problems is in that open source mindset of, here, I'm going to build this thing, I'm going to put it on GitHub, I'm going to allow people to pull it down and use it, or maybe fork that to build something on top of it. Or, like you said, you've had a couple of outside contributors who have come in and added some functionality and shored up a few things so that the product gets better and better. Can you talk through some of the other places that you might look to find tools that other people have built, be that elsewhere on GitHub or elsewhere in general, that you've been able to be a part of that from the assistant side instead of the conceptual, here's what I'm going to do, I'm going to start from zero and build up a thing. As a RPC guy, Rackspace Private Cloud, I know OpenStack is one of those places where people with some development chops will go in and start applying themselves. But where else have you found tools to work with?
I look at on PyPy a lot because I love I love Python. It's just something that I kind of it sticks with me. So when I'm looking for a new tool or something that I want to try out, or if I'm trying to solve a problem, I look at the PyPI Python package index a lot to see what's out there, who's making what's new, what's exciting. And so yeah, that's one place. Also, GitHub is a fantastic resource. Or Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, you'd be surprised how many things have already been answered on stuff like Stack Overflow. And you go in and you find like, oh, I have this totally obscure problem, and somebody 3 years ago had that same problem, and they're like, oh, I did this and it solved it. And then you see like 4 or 5 comments, months later, like, oh, and here's a tool and it just does it. You're like, oh, fantastic! I don't need to make this. So yeah, I try to leverage the community as much as possible. And if I'm using a open source project like that, if I find something that needs fixing or could be better, I normally will go and raise a Git issue or submit a pull request, patch, or try to just contribute as much as other people have contributed to projects I've worked on. Try to contribute back as well.
That's great. We love that aspect of open source community is that giving and sharing, and you're committing to one project and they're committing to one of yours, and I mean that's definitely one of the big things that appeals for us. You mentioned that you like to go into PyPy and look at the new projects that are out there. Do you have any that you've seen recently that you might want to throw a shout out to today? Oh, looks like you're muted again there, Kevin.
Sorry about that. I was
there it is.
Terrible on the mute button. Recent projects that I've played with. I've been actually playing. Well, I've been playing a lot with Python package building, and so I've been kind of cruising around there. I recently just put up a new package called YAPRT, Yappert, yet another Python repo tool. And it's but anyways, I don't have anything specific I could throw a shout out to. That's kind of been my life recently, is working in the new RPC product and Ansible, lots of Ansible recently.
Yeah, and I noticed that you've been doing a hangout of your own and bringing in some of the community there and kind of crowdsourcing the. It looks like a little bit of bug triage, a little bit of a couple other things that you're doing there. Just kind of getting some status updates, but doing it more in the open on a live hangout on air. Can you tell us a little bit about that project you've been working on? So
yeah, we at the Rackspace Private Cloud we came up with a new deployment process, in which we originally were calling Ansible LXC RPC. And at the last OpenStack Summit, we proposed it as something that could be up on StackForge. And the community voted on that, and it was accepted. So it's currently the OS Ansible deployment repository on StackForge, which is all being gated and leverages the same infrastructure that OpenStack is using, which is it's been great, and that is all it's all Ansible. It's 100%. Before in the Rackspace Private Cloud, we were using a lot of Chef, and we have switched everything over to using Ansible. In the process of doing that, maybe out of scope to the original question, but we're also doing it all in containers, which is LXC. It's not. Yeah, we're using Ubuntu as the base OS and LXC containers currently. Yeah, all orchestrated by Ansible.
So I know that Ansible is a tool in an ecosystem that is really catching more and more attention, as well as just the gravity that automation generally is developing. You've got a whole world of people building tools around not just Ansible, but any of the configuration management tools that are out there. Can you talk a little bit more about the things that the community is trying to do with Ansible, especially as it pertains to OpenStack, as that's what you're mainly involved in your day job these days?
Sure. Yeah, sure. We are deploying Ansible, or we're deploying OpenStack using Ansible from source. And so in our current repository, a lot of our stuff is kind of glued together. But we're, as a community, attempting to migrate to what Ansible has a concept of the galaxy, Ansible Galaxy, where roles can exist. And we are currently in the process of attempting to move all of our roles into a Galaxy format, and then eventually, hopefully, get them up onto Ansible Galaxy, which will just, I mean, it's already open source, it's already consumable by the public, but if they're up on Ansible Galaxy, we feel like we're just expanding the audience of people who can consume these roles. So from a community perspective, we're actively engaged with the Ansible community and the OpenStack community and trying to build out this deployment framework that is what we hope will take off.
It sounds like a transition to more of an ease of use model, less of let's get some stability and more into let's make this easier and easier to consume. We did a series of shows during the Paris summit. And a lot of the themes that we heard from the different people we spoke to would always tie back to this. You know, it had been working on building something that could be more stable, and then finally getting a relevant feature set together so that the basic things were taken care of. And that's less and less the focus of the OpenStack community. The features that have to be there are there. Now it's little edge case type features that are being added. The bulk of the requirements are in place. Now it's moving more towards how do we incorporate best practices? How do we add polish to something that's already pretty stable and already doing the basic things that are needed? How do we make it easier to consume for people who are just now coming to OpenStack instead of the early pioneering days where it's trying to get things to stable and trying to tinker until you get things to work for your specific reason. A lot of those problems have already been tackled. There's a lot less of that concern. It's more the polish phase. So it sounds like a lot of the work that's being done is to go beyond polish and make ease of adoption the focus. Is that sense that I'm getting lining up with what you're seeing, and where do you see it going next?
Yeah, actually, we are. We're trying to make the deployment of OpenStack infrastructure simple. I mean, it is still complicated. There's still a lot of parts, still a lot of moving pieces, a lot of knowledge that needs to be. Some person needs to have an understanding of how things work. But in our current Ansible stack, we are attempting to make it where you essentially fill out a form, and that form is a description of your infrastructure, and then Ansible will generate its own inventory and then deploy everything. I would say we're close to that, and I think that is where we will be going as a community eventually, where it's just the ease of deployment. Adding feature sets will be hopefully easier once the roles are separated out and built out in Galaxy-style roles. We can get more contributors moving into that, and the core infrastructure will then literally be a matter of, like, I want to use the Linux bridge agent. That should be a toggle. Just turn that on, turn it off. You shouldn't necessarily need to know everything there is to know about the Linux bridge agent to enable it in Neutron. And there's a million of those edge cases, and I think that we can solve most of them, if not all. And I think, yeah, ease of deployability, ease of use, ease of management, yeah, all of the above. That's where we're going.
Well, that's a great place to be and to be going. Drew hosted a series of hangouts last fall, interviewing people that were live at the OpenStack Summit in Paris. And that was one of the major themes. I think everybody independently, without any collaboration, they all said OpenStack is really growing up. OpenStack is really maturing. Mm-hmm. And previous summits had been focused a lot on the actual design of the the framework. What is OpenStack going to be? And now they were saying one of the big common themes was, okay, now how do we operate OpenStack? How do we run this at scale? And I think that what you're doing is even that next phase, which is, okay, we figured out how to operate it. How can we make it even easier to operate it and easier to deploy and get things out there? So I think that's fantastic, and really just want to applaud you for doing that. What else do you think would be some new avenues for OpenStack as it matures, and what else would you like to work on?
Specifically for OpenStack, I think that right now there's a lot of where the infrastructure components are kind of always expected to be where they were when you originally set them up, and you create your as the services are being deployed, you don't necessarily want them to be movable. In our Rackspace Private Cloud infrastructure, everything is in containers, and so I think that our next iteration, not necessarily our specific next iteration, but for OpenStack as a whole, would to make it so that a lot of those pieces are just become disposable, where if you can move it somewhere else based on load and try to do infrastructure orchestration, very similar to kind of like how Heat does it for instances. Kind of similar to what O is attempting to do right now as well. I think that we can get a lot of value out of having a dynamic infrastructure. I think is probably the best way to put it, and I'd like to work on that as well.
Great, that's some good stuff. Hey, so we have another question here from Matt. So I want to go ahead and ask this one if we can. This is taking it back just a little bit in the conversation. Matt asks, Kevin, would you consider the yet another Python repository tool to be extending PyPy into more of a distro package management tool?
No, not specifically. The yet another Python repo tool was built specifically so that I could take the requirements for all of the OpenStack projects that we were supporting at the time. Everything that has a requirement or everything that has a requirements text and is Python installable gets indexed by Yapper, and then it produces a coherent requirements text like file that will allow you to then comfortably say that all of the requirements have been met. And so with that Yapper will then go a couple steps further and then actually build all those requirements for you as Python wheels, and then store them in an index that you can use pip to install all of that. And it also produces links that you can use as to hard code, like these are the only packages I want you to be able to install for this release. And so the yet another Python repo tool is really a matter of taking known requirements from a whole bunch of different sources and then building a coherent set of requirements and producing a Python index for that. So no, I wouldn't say that it's a distro package management tool. It's more of an overarching, like, I know my project is going to require all of these pieces, make sure that I have all of the requirements and they're coherent.
Well, great. There you go. Thanks, Matt, for another question. Appreciate that, and that was a good one. That was a good one. So keep them coming. Looks like Paul is jumping in as well to say thank you. So thank you, Paul, for watching. Appreciate that. All right, thanks, Paul. Anybody else that wants to join in on the conversation, you can do that just as Matthew and Paul have. Using the Google Hangouts Q&A application. So just right there, just click on it and say, hey, yeah, I would like to add to this conversation and ask your question, and it'll pop up and we'll incorporate that into the Hangout. If you're watching along on YouTube, you can comment directly there in YouTube, and we'll grab those comments as well. And finally, you can use the hashtag CloudQA on Twitter or here on Google+, and we'll scoop those into our conversation as well. So thanks everybody for watching and submitting these questions. And if you just happen to be joining us, I just want to kind of remind everybody that this is the Rackspace Office Hours Hangout, and we are hanging out and chatting with Kevin Carter, a Rackspace Private Cloud developer, very active in the OpenStack community, and is also the author of a tool that I recommend quite a bit, which is Turbolift. So quite a few things here that we can commend commend Kevin on, but we're just sitting here chatting, and if you want to join the conversation, we'd be happy to have you. Happy to have you. Great. So let's see. What else? What else is going on, Kevin? Anything else that you want to mention and that you want to make sure that we get in touch with?
Just a couple of other tools. Back to a couple of questions ago, where Drew had made mention of some of the tools that I'd worked on in the past. Was another one that people found a lot of value in at the time when it was originally written. And actually, it's still kind of relevant. Was InstanceSync, and that was a tool to move a cloud server to somewhere else. Whether that be within another data center at Rackspace or another provider or whatever the case may be. I just figured I'd mention that as well. It's not a super fancy tool. It's literally a fancy rsync, but it works pretty well.
Well, the tools don't necessarily need to be that fancy. I mean, if they get the job done, I mean, that's the first part there is to get the job done, right? And I think that, you mentioned it earlier. You kind of approach some of this development as, how can I make this a little bit easier for the, for the customer, for the person that's going to be using this. So I think that's that main goal is, you probably saw. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Like, what issues were you seeing that got you to think, hey, I can fancy up rsync a little bit and make it a little bit easier for our customers to move images back and forth?
Yeah, actually, it literally came out of just like Turbolift, it came out of another customer need. It was a few years ago, and in New York there was a bunch of, it was a hurricane. I can't remember the name of the specific hurricane that came in, but it was Sandy, yeah. And there was flooding all over the place, and we had a whole bunch of customers at the time calling in saying that their data center was taking on water and they had like hours to move their stuff, and so. The original version of InstanceSync was rough, but it literally was the ability to take a running VM and synchronize the data somewhere else and have another running VM so that their business could stay online. That was the original intent and need that was being solved there. And yeah, it was Hurricane Sandy, I think it was. But yeah, that's where that came out of. And since then, it's been improved to be able to do other things, but for the most part, that's the core functionality.
Oh, that's amazing, and that's such a great story. We've heard it before. Drew, I know you've heard it before, where we've had customers that have been in literally that exact same scenario. Hey, my data center is on the 7th floor, or probably not the 7th floor, but on the 2nd floor of this building, and right now the water level is at the coming up to that 2nd floor. I need to move this now. So that's great, and it's amazing that you're able to get something like that out, and a good job on that. And I love hearing that it came directly from a very specific customer scenario. That's really cool.
Yeah, there was a what's that?
I think those kinds of stories that birth an idea and then you put that tool out into the world. The interesting thing to me is to see once a new tool is available. We have a very specific idea of, okay, this is going to be useful in this situation. Here's the situation that came up. We built a tool. Now we can solve that problem in that situation. And then somebody else sees the tool and they're like, with that crescent wrench, I think I can do this totally different thing. And then they have a novel problem that gets solved by that same tool. And so I see the ability to stand up a identical running VM from a running VM to be a really useful tool in troubleshooting, to be a really useful tool in creating geographic redundancy, there's a handful of ideas that just that kind of a tool starts this domino effect in my head. And it's really interesting for me to see the way customers approach tools that are out there that are built for a reason, like Hurricane Sandy. I need to get my data or my solution up and running elsewhere, and then well, I don't have a hurricane coming up, but I do have a migration that's going to be a pain in the neck. Totally using that, and then you see them put that into play in a slightly different or less under duress type of an issue. But I love seeing a solution leveraged in a handful of different ways, and the value that gets kind of amplified through just that first step of here's a tool that will knock that problem out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of really good uses of that tool, and I've gotten good feedback from customers. And actually, there was one customer sent me a map. It was a cable map. It's hanging on my wall at home. I should take a picture of it. But it's a cable map of the world of all of the different cables that connect the world's internet. And he sent it to me because he was moving servers from, I think it was from a data center in Europe to another one in the West Coast somewhere. He was like, he worked for that company, and he was like, I used your tool, it worked, and I sent you a map. And he was like, it's probably the coolest gift I ever had. And it's very cool.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always, we do it because we know that we're helping our customers, but when they when they take the time to, thank you personally like that really makes the day. All right, so here's a question that we sometimes like to ask. Some of our guests is just some generic questions. So let's say that you get the chance to give a TED Talk next week. They're going to say, hey, Kevin, we need you to come in and give a TED Talk, Technology, Entertainment, Design, the famous series of talks. What would your topic be if you're getting ready to give a TED Talk?
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, I think I would talk about. Containers, Linux containers, LXC specifically. That's something that I've kind of fell in love with as a technology. Found 1,000,002 uses for it. So, yeah, I think I would talk on that.
Well, I don't think we've. I don't think we would have time in the to talk about the 1,000,002, but maybe give us one or two uses that you might have found for LXC.
I mean, most people are familiar with Docker at this point, and it is really just I found it just more. It fit more of my use cases, more of my needs, and so I have put everything from my web servers that are serving my cloud node.io are currently running LXC containers. My ZNC bouncer is running in an LXC container. And like I was mentioned earlier, all of our Ansible bits are powered by LXC containers as well. So we're trying to use LXC everywhere.
So just as an alternative to Docker and with a overlapping but different at the same time feature set.
Yeah.
You just for your specific use cases, it's working out better for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, that's good. I know we've been talking quite a bit about Docker. I know that Linux containers have been around for quite a while, but Docker kind of came on the scene 18 months ago, really, and just started making a big waves about 18 months ago or so. And it seems like we've talked about containers on the show just about every week since then. But Docker's the name that most of our audience is aware of right now. But there are plenty of other options out there. So we're seeing a lot more. So good. That's a really good one. I definitely would want to sit in on that talk. So thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody.
Would you mind going over like a couple of lessons learned when it comes to LXC? Like here's a fabulous feature that I couldn't live without, and here's maybe a gotcha to be aware of so that you don't make the same mistake I made that one time or over and over or whatever the case may be.
I don't know if there's any one thing that I could point out that would be a gotcha there. We were running a Nova Compute in LXC containers for a little while, and it works pretty well. You have to give a lot of resources and access to the container from the host, but it works, like I said, very well. The only one thing that can't work is Cinder, because you can't do an iSCSI initiator in the container due to a kernel limitation. So don't do that. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific like I could point out that would be an interesting little tidbit.
Oh, that's fair.
Interesting tidbits are always nice.
Yeah.
So you've built a handful of tools. You're working at Rackspace as a pro here. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's just getting their feet wet, either with OpenStack or with Python, as they're kind of beginning that journey? What kind of advice or feedback would you give to somebody in that position?
The first thing I would tell them is, to not be afraid to ask questions. The OpenStack community and a lot of open source communities rely on IRC, and sometimes people are afraid to post questions or ask questions in IRC due to they don't know what the response is going to be, or maybe they have a perception that everybody is mean. But I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just ask away. And as you're getting your feet wet in development, whether that be making a bash script or developing in Python, Ruby, C, anything that whatever you're interested in, as you're getting your feet wet and doing these projects, I say do it. Do it and put it on your private GitHub. It doesn't need to be a private repo. Just throw it up on GitHub, let people see it, develop in it in the open. Don't be afraid of community feedback on something, because for every negative comment, there's probably one positive one, and actually most of the time you can take the negative comment and be like, all right, well that person was mean, but at least they had a fair point. I think I can adjust. I'd say don't be afraid of that kind of a ranting feedback that IT people are known for.
That's good advice. I've tried to get my feet wet in programming. I still have very dry feet, but that is honestly one of the types of concerns that I would have. Is that what type of feedback will I get? Will it be good feedback? Is it feedback that I can and should be trusting? So that's good feedback to get. To definitely understand or to know, just not to be afraid to ask for that help. And that's coming from a real live developer, and it's don't be afraid to ask for help and for feedback. So we'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll help others.
And just I'd say do it. Instead of just do it, do it.
Are there any tools or anything that you used that you would absolutely recommend, or that you found since you've developed the skills that you would have loved to have had back when you were getting started?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, I use Vim for pretty much everything now, but
I'm not sure that we want to start that war just yet.
Yeah, exactly. But some of the developer tools that are out there now are fantastic. Like PyCharm out there, if you're a Python developer. Most of the stuff from JetBrains, I think it's Brains. Anyway, most of the stuff that they create are fantastic sets of tools for Ruby, for PHP, for Python. So I would say, evaluate these tools and use what works best for you. In the sense of PyCharm, they actually have a community edition. And so you don't have to necessarily go and pay for a license for PyCharm and still be able to get most of the benefits of using this an awesome tool. Some of the other ones, development tools, I guess Sublime Text is one that's out there that a lot of people use as well. That's very configurable, lots and lots and lots of modules. And so, if that was around when I started, I probably would have used something like that.
Very good advice. Is there anything in relation to OpenStack that you would recommend as far as someone getting started with their own cloud deployment?
Actually, so a lot of our development takes place on the Rackspace public cloud. We build OpenStack clusters using the public cloud resources. So you can. DevStack is a nice little tool that will get you an all-in-one kind of running. In our own deployments, using the Ansible bits, we have an all-in-one script that will actually use its own Ansible bits to deploy itself on that one box. So I'd say you start out with the all at once, a project that you enjoy or that you think will be interesting, and then go dive into that. But I think it's easier to start with something that's already working and then kind of devolve from there. Because if you start with the headache of deploying OpenStack by hand, and you're getting your feet wet, and this is your first time, that can be quite a headache.
Yeah, I am in the camp where I can look at what someone has done with something like Python and basically see how it works, but I'm not to the point where I can create it from scratch. If you said, I need you to end there, I'll just go around and round and round. But if I find someone who's gotten there, and I look at what they've done, I can see the steps that they went through and realize it there, and then that's what helps me learn what good code looks like versus my code looks like. And that's the thing that's been the most helpful for me, is starting with something that works and working backwards from there. So I think, at least in my experience, that's been a great thing. So I'm glad that your experience corroborates that. Use a working version of that thing you're trying to learn. Don't try to start at absolute zero before you work up to that working solution.
I'd also say, don't like, as you have that functioning product or that functioning thing, and you're trying to work on it, beat it up, like destroy it, like, take it apart. Don't be afraid to break things. And when it's totally broken, then try to put it all back together. I think that's you're going to learn from getting your hands, getting knee deep in everything that's going on a lot faster, a lot more than going through a traditional staring at a whiteboard, somebody drawing code on a whiteboard. Yeah, you can definitely understand what's going on a whiteboard, and I use whiteboards all the time. But if you're trying to understand or learn something, I think getting your hands in it early is the best way of doing it.
Yeah, that's very, very good advice. I definitely think that most people learn. Well, I'm not going to make any generalizations there, but I think that people have the best chance to learn when they can look at it in a whole bunch of different ways. So not just trying to look at the whiteboard, but also getting in there and doing it, and trying to learn that way. And like you said, tear it apart, like rip it apart, reverse engineer it. I mean, that's a great way. That's basically the way that I learned how to do, how to create a website. Is I would just view the source of a page that I liked and figure out, hey, what did you do? What is this element? And you can do that really well with HTML. Once you get into a dynamic page, you kind of have to look at the code underneath. But you can learn a lot just by kind of seeing how things are put together, and looking at people's code can teach you a lot about how the methodologies that they use. But then actually getting in there and taking it apart and trying to put it back together in your own configuration, I think that's really when it moves beyond just kind of knowing, but then into understanding and being able to apply it, and that's really where you want to go. I think as a developer, or really in any type of enterprise. So, yep. All right. Well, hey, Kevin, it was great to have you on with us today. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day and sitting down and chatting with us. We talked a little bit about Turbolift, which is a tool that we recommend to our customers on an almost weekly basis here. InstanceSync is another one that you've built out that's a great tool that's been very beneficial to our customers. And then, of course, all the other little projects and tools that you just do on that daily basis that help us out. So I really appreciate all that you do for Rackspace and for our customers at large. So thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us today.
No, thank you for having me up. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so if people want to catch up with you and see your stuff, they can catch you on Twitter right there at Cloud Null. But what other avenues do they have to keep up with your development? Anything new that you might be working on? Anything like that?
That's GitHub/Cloud Null as well. Same username. It's where pretty much everything that I do is going to end up there. And then I have a blog, but I don't update it very much. So Yeah.
That's understandable. I've got about 20 different restarts on my blog as well.
Yeah.
So this time I am going to write more.
Yeah.
So
I promised myself every year.
exactly.
One or two
Exactly.
posts.
I'm honestly skeptical of any human who can consistently update a blog. If you do it every now and again, you're more human, and you can get a weekly update out there. They have a
I agree.
team or a writer that they pay or something. I don't know. I think it's cause for
I
concern
agree.
if someone's able to keep
Yeah.
that up.
But yeah, that's
wary of those.
and my Google Plus is there too.
Great. Sounds good. Well, thanks again. Drew, looks like you have something to say.
Oh, I was going to say, peruse GitHub broadly. If you're looking for tools or code to review, things that can help you build out your specific set of skills, I think GitHub's a hugely valuable place to start. We mentioned Stack Overflow today already, but check out Racker Labs and check out some of the other tools that are out there that can help you flesh out the tool set that you have at your disposal, as well as give you some starting points for that next project that you've got in mind. Someone's likely already built something similar to what you need, if they haven't already completely solved that problem. So with a little bit of searching and knowing where to look, you can really have a good starting point. You can stand on the shoulders of the people who have come before and have a functional tool that you can just add that feature or that use case to, maybe just a little bit of adaptation on forking something like that. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's all I had.
Yeah, Racker Labs is a good resource. There's like 20 pages of projects that you can build on. Like fantastic projects too, made by really good people. So I definitely recommend that.
Absolutely. Well, that's all I have. I just wanted to put that out there before we're done.
And that's a great place to end it too. Is check out the great tools out there at Racker Labs. Thanks to everybody for joining us and watching us, and everybody for submitting your questions and comments. Really appreciate that. We can continue this conversation down the road. There's all three of our Twitter handles there, so you can ping us that way. Is one of the quicker ways to get in touch if you want to discuss anything you saw on the show. Those of you that are watching in the future, we can talk that way. Yeah, thanks. We do this every week, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central Time. So catch us next week for another brand new live Office Hours Hangout. And I guess we'll see everybody next week. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Have a good rest of your night or day. Talk to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye.